be going live in 2 seconds here. So once it gets launched, I think we're good. All right. So hey, everybody, it's John Barrows, J. Barrows Consulting. Super excited to introduce my guest today, Mark Birch. Mark was with the Enterprise Sales Forum, Sales Meetup. And Mark, you want to give everybody kind of a quick little intro on who you are, what the Enterprise Sales Meetup's all about, and where they can find information on it?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Glad to be here. Name Mark Birch. I founded this thing called Enterprise Sales Forum to bring B2B salespeople together. Live situations, you get to network, share ideas, and listen to really great, skilled sales operators share their experiences and their insights. And we have sessions monthly in different cities. So the best way to find us, you can go to enterprisesalesforum.com, or you can go check out our individual chapter sites on meetup.com. Actually, I have a really great session tomorrow up in Boston. So if you're there, I'll see you.
Very cool.
Boston Enterprise
Awesome. Yeah,
Sales
I wish
Forum.
I was, man. I love it. Yeah, I'm actually going to be in New York, so unfortunately I'm not going to make it. But one of the reasons, I know, but everybody should go. If you're in Boston, you should go. But one of the reasons I reached out to you, Mark, was because you posted a blog a little while ago on Enterprise Sales Meetup about writing skills. And it actually got me, it hit me because something that I've been noticing in the background of what I've been doing in my sales. You know, I teach, sales skills, and a lot of it is rooted in the fundamentals. So a lot of clients that I engage with, they like me working with some of their younger kids to make sure that they have that foundation. But what I've realized is, and I've gotten this more than a few times, where somebody's like, yeah, John, I love the whole idea of the fundamentals of sales and that type of thing, but do you also do anything on like grammar and writing skills? And it caught me by surprise, because I was just like, the first few times I kind of just laughed it off and said, this, okay, whatever, right? But after hearing it 5, 6, 7 times, and then you posted something, I'm like, we might have a problem here. And I wanted to address that, and then we're going to extend this to the evolution of sales and how sales reps progress in their careers. But let's as crazy as this sounds to me, let's address the whole business writing skills and just overall communication skills. Help me understand, what are you seeing out there right now, based on the people that you interact with and some of the clients you work with and stuff?
Yeah, John, it's something that's been a pet peeve of mine for a very long time. And I've noticed that there's been a deterioration over time. Now, just for context, I've been a sales professional for the past 20 plus years. So when I went to school, obviously pretty rigorous. There was a lot of time spent on basic grammar, English skills, comprehension, writing, and you just went through that process. And even in college, even in engineering school that I went through, you still have to take some basic humanities and English literature understanding courses. So that was my background. I can't necessarily speak to what is going on today in schools or colleges, but I believe that we've gotten away from the fundamentals of what good, clear, concise business writing is all about. I think there's two things that are going on. One, I do think that there is a much more of I'd say a liberal take on communications, in the age of Snapchat and Twitter, and, we're condensing our thoughts into, emojis, emoticons, shorthand, BRB, LOL. So there's some of that, but I also think that in large part, we've de-emphasized the importance of writing, particularly in the sales profession, because we've kind of thrown it over the board to marketing to tell us what to write, what to say. And that's a very bad place to be, because if we think that the skills around concise business language are bad in sales, well, marketing, they take something which should be clear, understandable English, and they muddle it with the worst, just most obscene slaughtering of our language with buzzwords, non-sentences, and run-ons that go on for way too long.
Yeah. I hear you, because my background's marketing. So yours is engineering, mine's marketing, and I think that's really what gives me that perspective on being in sales and kind of the difference between marketing language and sales language, and then executive language. Because I think that's the thing that, you know, I think I don't begrudge anybody for not knowing how to speak the language of a CEO, especially some 22-year-old kid coming out of school, that type of stuff. But I'm having a hard time really, you know, wrapping my head around the fact that they can't even put together, you know, some of these sentences that I'm reviewing in some of these emails or some of these emails in general. I look at and I'm like, what? Like, where in our education system did we fall flat here and not educate these kids on the ability to have these conversations? Because you can't have the executive conversation until you can have an actual grammatically correct. And by the way, stones here, throwing stones in a, you know, glass house type of thing. If there wasn't spell check on Microsoft Pro, I wouldn't even send emails because I'm a horrendous speller. My grammar is piss poor, but I at least pay attention to it. You know what I mean? And when I'm writing something important, I take a few extra minutes to take a look back at it and say, okay, is this accurate? Am I using language that makes sense here? Am I making complete sentences? So I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, what do reps do right now? I don't necessarily know if reps even recognize that they can't write effectively. And so what can a rep do right now who's potentially watching this to say, hey, how do I even know if I'm writing effectively? And two, what can I do about it so that I can improve my writing skills and get to the point where I can write short, concise, direct business language that gets people to engage with me?
Yeah. Hey, John, you wrap a whole lot of things in what you just said. And I'm going to go back to a point that we actually discussed previously before we got on this session, which is the idea of artificial intelligence writing better prospecting emails than most reps, and maybe even you and I as well. And I think that really says something. It says two things. I think we're trying to dumb down the language to try and get as concise. Like, I love tools such as 5 sentences. I love thinking about I remember I took a class a while back ago on communications and this idea of creating an F-shaped email and all these different types of ideas or tools out there. But at the same time, I think we've lost a critical aspect of what goes between our minds and what we type on a screen, which is we're not really thinking clearly. And what you're really seeing is a reflection of what is muddled from a language perspective when you read these sentences which don't make any sense whatsoever, that are not compelling, that confuse the reader. What that really is not only maybe a lack of fundamentals or rigor around how people write, but also a lack of rigor around how you think. And I actually wrote in the last Enterprise Sales Forum newsletter last week this whole section about strategic thinking, because we are competing in this world in sales where we want to get high volume, high velocity, in and out real quick. We want to find the prospects. We want to move them through the funnel, and it's fast. We're executing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we never stop at any point in time to think, is that template I'm sending to that contact in that targeted account, is that what I should be saying? And I think we're getting lazy throughout the process, and it's not just reps. It's also on the backs of SDR managers, and sales leaders that are pushing this stuff out. I tell you, when I have the opportunity, I don't have a lot of time available, but sometimes I'll get some of these really bad prospecting emails, and I will write back to the head of sales of that company and said, this is what your team is sending out. You may want to rethink, because I'm not going to blame the rep for sending that. I'm going to blame the people that are creating those templates, because it's obviously these are templates, and who's approving that. So I think across the board, there's a lot of blame on why our writing is poor. And I want to extend that to this idea of trying to speak to executives. Because it's not only affecting that very first engagement you have with the prospect, but it's also all of the subsequent conversations and communications. And so if you think about what a CFO cares about, or a CIO, or a CEO, these are people that have been in business for a while. They have to think strategically. They probably have pretty good backgrounds in, whether from education or business. And so they know how to effectively communicate for the most part. And then they receive these atrocities of business communications, and there's nowhere to go because you've already lost credibility. And if you can't present yourself in a way that is able to deliver whatever message you're trying to convey in a way that's concise and understandable, like, you lose credibility like that.
Yeah, and that's actually because my question, and you answered it there, was going to be like, does it matter, right? Does writing skills, because we're ultimately what we're talking about here is we're picking on communication skills because that's writing skills because that's the obvious one. You can look at it and say that's a terrible sentence or whatever, but overarching communication skills, and it leads to that, right? Because the question I have, a lot of times is, I got a pet peeve about something, but does it really matter? So, for instance, does it really matter that a kid doesn't know calculus or doesn't know this? Because, the calculus, I don't know. I just punch it into a calculator. I'll give a quick example. I just went to Italy for 2 weeks, and, I wanted to learn the language, but I didn't have time, and so I didn't. So what did I do? I got this app on my phone that I literally just spoke into and said, look, I got to find the bathroom. Please show me where the bathroom is. I'm about to explode. And it would just translate it directly into Italian, perfect with, with an Italian guy speaking it. So, like, do I really need to know another language? So communication skills, and I'm getting to what you hit on, which is the importance of both written and verbal communication skills through the progression of your career to be able to get across your point. Because the people that are making the decisions, they have legitimate communication skills, and they can cut through bullshit pretty fast, and they can see bullshit really fast. So is that kind of, for those kids out there who are like, yeah, whatever, I got spell check, I got this AI thing, who cares, I'm getting by okay. Talk to me about, I guess maybe reinforce a little bit more of why, from a career standpoint, it's critical to improve those skills.
Ernest Hemingway, which is who I started that essay with when I published it and you picked it up. Ernest Hemingway said that good writing is good conversation, only more so. And it was a real astute point because we think about communication. I'm going to talk to a C-level executive. Well, before you even get there, what are you going to talk about? Very few people actually do this, but I actually want to write out an outline of the things I'm trying to get across. Like, I do sales planning, right?
Yep.
And so even if I'm not writing, a full-on essay that's going to be published somewhere, I still am using language. I'm using the skills that I've honed over the past 20 plus years in business to clearly and concisely lay out what my strategy is for having that conversation and building in the talking points that I want to convey. And doing that in a way that doesn't sound rigid or canned or awkward. Right? Yeah. And that's the other thing about writing, is that I think a lot of the challenge that people have with writing is that it does feel very formulaic.
Right.
People need to understanding that when you're just starting out, when you're a young rep, you don't know a whole lot. You're probably talking to people that are way above your pay grade and experience level, and you're trying to build credibility and you're trying to build rapport. That's where it matters. The way that you write reflects how you think. And so when someone sends me something, or even we have a conversation, and I step back and say, I'm not exactly sure I understood what he said, what you say, and what you write is a symptom of how you think.
And actually, I love that point about Hemingway about, what do you say? The writing is, say that quote again.
Good writing is good conversation.
But even more, right? Because right now, I'm going through this exercise right now where I'm going back into studio in July to cut up my, my content and put it online. And I already have like one program. I'm trying to put the other program. And the exercise, when you record video for learning purposes, you don't just light up the camera and be like, all right, cool, let me talk to you about this. There's a certain flow that you have to have in order for your point to get across. And so my process for doing this is I literally write out word for word what I train. So as I, and I think through because I've done it so many times from a training, like standing up in front of a class, that I can, okay, here's how I introduce the topics and here's how I go through. But then what I realize is the way I deliver in person, actually, I don't have that much flexibility in video. I have to be much more concise and follow a much more logical train of thought. Because when I train, it's like I'll talk about a topic and then I'll bring it to another one and I'll kind of circle back to that other one. And that's all well and good when you can interact with a crowd. But on video, it has to follow this certain thing. So the whole idea of literally, I've written out every word, and then I take that, reorganize it, and think through the process of, okay, what makes sense now and how's this going to get through? And even that process alone has helped me realize how important it is. It's now restructured my on-site training. Going through that process of writing it down, I'm like, shit, I'm all over the place with some of this stuff, the way I actually present it. I'm betting some people are a little bit confused with my train of thought here. I need to kind of refocus on certain things so people get the core concepts here. And so, and that kind of leads me to, like, what can a rep do, right? Forget about what can a rep do. What should a rep do to improve their writing skills, their presentation, their language? What can they do right now, like a rep today, say, shit, I got to go do something that isn't going to take me a ton of time, but it will help me move the dial a little bit and help me get better at this? What would your recommendations to that kid be?
Yeah. Oddly enough, I think because I've been thinking through this and thinking in preparation for a conversation, be in an environment where you're forced to think. That could be a Toastmasters club, could be some sort of environment where you have to debate. But when you have to actually get up in front of people and convey an argument, to make a point, to debate a topic, you have to be very much on point. You need to be able to think clearly, logically, concisely, speak in a manner that others will understand. Because what that also does is provide immediate feedback. You see on people's faces pretty immediately when you've lost them. Right?
Yeah.
And actually, I think a lost art in a lot of sales training is just videotaping reps.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something which is done, I think, in a rigorous enough manner. Mm-hmm. But when you do that and you show people how they present themselves or how they discuss topics from video, it's really eye-opening. So being able to start to control your thinking is really the first step in becoming a much better communicator and significantly improving your writing skills. From a writing perspective, it takes practice. You got to write more. And so I'd say, if you can, if you're in an environment where you have the freedom to do so, don't rely on templates. Actually write down original thoughts and start to think about, if I'm selling to, say, a persona, say a VP of marketing, let me think from that perspective and write something that would be compelling to someone on the other end of the fence receiving this message. The other thing is just practice writing in general. And I realize this is not everyone's cup of tea, but the way I became a much better, much more confident writer was I started my own blog back in 2009, and I was just rigorous. Every day I'd write. It wasn't anything fancy. I'd put it up on Tumblr. It started to catch an audience, and there'd be interaction. And just the fact that you put something out there publicly makes you be more considerate in what you're actually writing and allows you to, I'd say, it creates that internal fear that drives you to become better at what you do, right? It's like with anything, like until you actually dive in, you're never going to get better. And it was that fear that, like, in a way, I was able to harness and utilize into forcing myself to become a better writer, more consistent writer each and every day. And also because it is in the public sphere, like there's certain repercussions. Like you can't, like, and there were times when I wrote a really shitty post, right?
Yeah.
It happens, right? Get it out of your system. What happens in that process, though, is another thing which is super important, right? And it gets back to that Hemingway quote about good conversation.
Yeah.
You want to find your tone. You want to convey who you are. There's too much business writing out there, which is so wooden, and it doesn't feel alive. When I read something, I want to know that the people that were writing that person that was responsible for that writing, believed in what they were writing. So you've got to be able to find a way that you're comfortable and find a writing style that works for you. And you won't be able to do that if you're just sending out email templates, and that's the extent of what you write. So finding an outlet to just write.
I think that's fantastic. And actually, to that degree, you don't know what you don't know until you get caught on it. So, for instance, right? So, I mean, as bad as this sounds, the difference between there and there. When you write, you know what I mean? Like whatever way you spell it, right? And you misuse the word. As soon as somebody calls you out on that, right, you'll never misspell it, or you'll always think about it when you write it again. It's just like when I got caught, and I think every executive, I'm guessing you did too, has been caught with this one when I used to say, to be honest with you. When you say, to be honest with you, and I said that to an executive once, and he stopped the conversation and he said, hold on a second, so you've been lying to me up until this point? And as soon as I got called out on it, I'm like, holy shit, all right. And I'll never, ever, ever say, to be honest with you again. And I think it's the same holds true in writing. Like when you write something, to your point, you put it out there and you get critiques on it. You have to be open for that critique. And somebody calls you out on a really bad, email that you wrote, or, you use the wrong verbs or phrases or whatever it is, that sticks. And then the recording, I can't recommend that enough, as far as public speaking and those like Toastmasters, those type of things, because if you ever want to improve on anything, get yourself recorded doing it. Holy shit. I went to a presentation skills training once after 3 years of delivering this training. So I was a trainer for the 3 years on my own. I was like, you know what? I was never trained on how to present. I went to a presentation skills training just for my own. Like I found one, I got an email blog or whatever. Oh, sure, let me go to this. It was local in Boston. And they did it. They recorded you. You stood up there, you give whatever, and they recorded you. And then they come back and they show you. And the whole idea is the trainer is supposed to kind of, point out. The trainer didn't have to say one word. I looked at what I was on the screen of me, the video of me presenting for less than 5 minutes, and I was horrified. I mean, horrified by some of the shit that I was doing. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I've been doing this. Like, let's put it this way. So I used to, how everybody has their own problems with their hands and how they hold their hands, right? Well, I used to hold my hands like this, but not here, right around my belt line. That was my positioning. So pretty much for 3 years, I was framing myself in front of the entire class and probably insulting almost every woman that I ever delivered training to, right? So I'm sitting there going, why didn't somebody tell me about this? But as soon as I saw it, I never did it again. So I think your point of just practicing, getting away from the templates, create an original thought, even if it's not a good one, it's better than a template and being a monkey. And this, this just speaks to something that I'm a wholehearted believer in, is just the over automation of sales and turning sales reps into robots and monkeys that just kind of crank through template emails. Yeah. I worry, and going back to the artificial intelligence stuff, man, I really do think writing skills are important. Communication skills are important. The problem is, I think in the next couple of years here, none of us are going to trust an email that hits our inbox, because artificial intelligence is going to be that much better at writing than most reps are. And you'll get an email, your email in your inbox, and you'll read it and be like, oh shit, that's a really thoughtful email. That rep really did a good job. And then as soon as you find out that an artificial intelligence bot wrote it, your confidence in who's writing these emails is going to go away. So I think that's why it's still important to leverage that, because of just the overall communication, the ability to communicate with sales reps. But it's scary to me, the reps that are just going through the motions, because I think they're the ones that are straight up going to get replaced.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very astute point, because we're getting to a point where artificial intelligence can do some of that initial heavy lifting. Yep. If all we're doing is sending out, and by the way, the templates that people are sending out are just not that good anyway. Like, I don't need to see another email about your CEO said that we should chat. Like, we've been there back in 2012. Thank you very much for that.
Right.
But
or 1, 2, or 3 stuck under a rock bullshit email. That one, right? That one's my favorite.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we're not writing anything that's all that great or insightful. Whereas a computer you can program an algorithm to go and scrape LinkedIn, scrape Google, scrape all these various different data sources, cobble some language together, which could look like it came from you, could come from me, and be way more personable than anything that most humans are writing at this point in time. And I think we've definitely done a disservice, because I think the automation has really created a barrier between the sellers and the buyers, right? So they don't want to see any of these emails, right? And so that's why I will tell you this: anyone who's out there watching this, who's prospecting every day, they're not seeing results, they don't seem to be getting anywhere, they're banging their head against the wall. Stop it with the templates. If you can write, doesn't have to be short, but just a concise email that shows that you've done your homework and that you can present something which is insightful. Like, I send out emails, and these emails could take me half an hour to write, sometimes longer. So I'm trying to be really thoughtful, and I'm reaching out to CIOs and CTOs on behalf of the company I'm employed with, Stack Overflow. But those are our buyers ultimately. Those are the people that need to make decisions. And I'm not going to get anyone to open up my emails with a crocodile saying, "Hey, were you eaten by a crocodile?" Like, that's not going to be very compelling. Right? And we had last week at the Enterprise Sales Forum in New York City, I actually invited a CTO and a SVP of engineering to speak and convey their thoughts on what they're seeing every day out there, being on the receiving end of all this. And it was really interesting. They said so many, like at least 9 out of 10, if not more, of the stuff that's coming in their inbox was crap, and they will never open it. But every so often, they will get something which looks thoughtful, which obviously there's a call to action, which, I'd like to spend some time. They don't have a problem with that. They have a problem with everything that goes before any call to action, which just doesn't seem to add any value, doesn't even typically make sense. And they don't even really care. Like, it was funny because one of our speakers, Vikram, Rajiv, he said that, sometimes they'll read an email and they'll see like some grammar mistakes or whatever, and someone asked, does that bother you? And he's like, no, I don't That doesn't bother me because the rest of the message was spot on.
Yep.
And we had a conversation. That's where good, clear, concise, meaningful writing can make an impact. You put in the effort. You know what? 30 minutes may sound like a shitload time to dedicate to one communication, but that one communication could be your next, 50K deal, 100K deal, $1 million deal.
Yeah.
It's not about the volume. It's about how much you want to care.
And I think actually to transition that to what you had said about just start writing, right? Like it could be a blog, just get your words out there. That could be it, right? Maybe it's one email a day where you literally spend 15 to 20 minutes really thinking through just one email and crafting it in a way and thinking it through and reading it over. There's your blog, right? You don't have to start a blog. You don't have to, do these Toastmaster stuff, but once a day, pick an account that you really want to get into, do some homework and try to develop that concise messaging. And I think to your point, it doesn't necessarily, we kind of started with the grammar and writing, that type of stuff. It doesn't actually have to be perfect. It's the point that you're trying to make and how clear you can be with it. Not necessarily if you use the right grammatical phrasing of it or even spelled something, misspelled something, even though that tends to, some people do pick up on that and they have pet peeves about it. But it's really more about how you're conveying the message and how quickly you're getting to the point from a business value standpoint that is the most critical piece of this. And you're not going to learn that unless you do it. And to your point, get away from the templates every once in a while. I understand volume needs to be there. Where I feel like we're in this weird world right now of, we're still telling reps to make 50, 60, 70 dials or whatever activities a day, but we know that quality is what matters. And so reps are getting this mixed message right now. But
exactly.
Send out your template emails, do your stuff that your managers are telling you to, but once a day, pick one account, write a thoughtful email and see what happens. If for nothing else, to improve your skills. Right? You might not even get a response, but if nothing else, it'll hone your skills in writing original content, original thought that'll help translate into having conversations with executives and such. So cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. We're up on time here. This was a great conversation as always. There was a million other things I wanted to get to with you, but I think this was as odd as this is. I think this is actually becoming more important. This communication skills thing, and I think that you hit on it, and I've been seeing it out there. So I really appreciate you coming on with me here. Again, tell everybody where they can find Enterprise Meetup so that they can go check it out and get. Because I think if you can come to the Boston one tomorrow, fantastic. But where do they go again?
Yeah, go to enterprisesalesforum.com. Put your email in, you'll get the newsletter, which advertises all the upcoming events around the country and world, because we have 21 different chapters. You can also go on meetup.com. If you just type in Enterprise Sales Forum, you're going to find, if we have a chapter in that city, you'll find it. It will be the top result.
Awesome. And I'll put that link in the Facebook post once this goes out. So again, Mark, it's been a blast talking to you as always. And let's keep this conversation going. All right.
All right. Cool. Same here. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, brother.
Later. Peace out.